Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 5, Episode 5, The Bris. Hi everyone. How you doing? I'm okay. I'm boring. I'm looking at my notes for the episode, and in the placeholder for banter, I just have the word banter. So I clearly have nothing to talk about that's of interest. I'm not sure I ever have anything to talk about that's of interest to any of you, but you know what? I just make you listen anyway. But today, I'm just going to dive right into the Bris. How does that sound? Okay, good. The synopsis for the Bris is as follows. After Elaine and Jerry become godparents to a friend's baby, Elaine is asked to arrange the bris. Kramer's vehement opposition to the circumcision proves founded when the mohel accidentally slices Jerry's finger. George tries in vain to get recompensed for damages sustained to his car after a suicidal man lands on its roof. Kramer suspects a genetic engineering experiment is underway in the hospital after he stumbles across a pigman. This episode was written by Larry Charles. We start out the episode in the hospital. Jerry, Elaine, and George are visiting their friends who just had a baby, Myra and Stan. Myra had the baby! We get to meet Myra and her husband. This is the Myra whose baby message caused Jake Jarmel and Elaine's breakup in the last episode. So Stan is telling a very graphic account of the birth, and He's got it. He doesn't need any more details. That's enough. Stan admires his baby nursing, sucking away. Look at that. Suck, suck, suck. Asks Jerry to look at it. This doesn't make you uncomfortable, does it? No. Why would it make me uncomfortable? My friend's wife's breast is sticking out. Why would that make me uncomfortable? Stan tells them that after the sucking comes the weaning. So first you suck and then you wean. You must wean. The actress who plays Myra is Jeannie Ellis. She's a very accomplished voice actor, literally hundreds of voice credits on her IMDb, from My Little Pony in the 80s to Solar Opposites, which is a current series on Hulu. I don't have much to say about her performance. She really doesn't get a lot of dialogue or any funny moments. Probably could have given a lot of Stan's dialogue to her, but anyway, she's perfectly fine as Myra. George comes sauntering over from the window. How about that spot, huh? Can't beat that spot. He is so enamored with the parking spot he got at the hospital. Thinks even the baby should see the spot, start his life on an uplifting message. Jerry's wondering where the hell Kramer is. He's supposed to be there by now. And then we see a shot of Kramer trying to find the room. He thinks it's 1937 when it's, I think, 1397, something like that. While he's looking, a guy asks him where the elevator is. Kramer tells him where it is, and then he sees 1937, and he goes in and sees a pigman. Back to the baby's room. George is still going on and on about his parking spot. Elaine can't take it. I'm taking a cab home. Stan and Myra kind of get serious and tell Jerry and Elaine they want to ask them something, to be the godparents of Stephen. Wow! They are so flattered. Jerry does a bad impression of Marlon Brando as the godfather. Then Kramer comes storming in, telling them about the pigman he just saw. Elaine's like, that's great, Kramer. Anyway, what's involved in being a godparent? And Stan says, well, mainly you just have to help with the bris. That grabs Kramer's attention. You mean circumcision. He's very against the tradition. Then George notices people milling around his car. Then he looks up and sees a guy on the roof. Kramer recognizes that guy. He told him where the elevator was. The man jumps and lands on George's perfectly parked car. My car! George runs out of the room. My take on this scene, lot of stuff happening in the scene. Unfortunately, none of it's very fun for our Elaine. I like that Elaine isn't bothered by the breastfeeding at all, and I think it's so typical that Jerry would be. This could have maybe warranted a fun moment between Jerry and Elaine, maybe Elaine giving him a hard time about how uncomfortable he is. But no, we don't get any of that. In fact, JLD doesn't really get a line of dialogue until a few minutes into the scene. It's pretty bizarre, actually. My favorite part of the scene is George's plot. I really enjoy how excited he is about his parking space. But overall, it's kind of meh. All right, next we are in Jerry's apartment. Elaine is stressing about finding a moil. What the hell is a moil? Now, the moil is the person who performs a circumcision, and Jerry isn't sympathetic at all that that's her job because his job is to hold the baby while it gets circumcised. Elaine asks Jerry, hey, have you ever seen one? Meaning an uncircumcised penis. He says no, and has she? Yeah, she has. And we can tell by Elaine's face she didn't like it. It had no face, no personality. It was like a Martian. But hey, that's me. George enters. He has the estimate for the repair on his car, and it's not good. And he says, the hospital should pay for it. Jerry's like, you're screwed. I know. He just can't help but think, what if the guy could have moved over and landed on city property on the sidewalk? Elaine isn't sympathetic at all. She has to interview a moil. Jerry's so amused by this. How about our Elaine, huh? Attended the finest finishing schools on the Eastern Seaboard, equestrian competitions, debutante balls. Look at her now, interviewing moils. Kramer enters. He shows them this article about genetic testing at the hospital. Pigman, baby, pigman. He's insisting it's a military thing. They're making pig warriors. George wishes there were pigmen. He would look a lot better if there were some pigmen running around. Jerry says, nah, don't be so sure. There's always some group of perverts who would be into them. Some women saying, ooh, that little tail really turns me on. Well, that's all Elaine can take. That's just about enough. Oh, what, this doesn't interest you? Elaine says, no, please. Tape this conversation about the pigmen and the women who love them, and I'll listen to it next time I'm here. She's got to go interview a moil. Kramer's like, oh, they should call that thing off, Elaine. It's a barbaric ritual. Well, perhaps one day when the pigmen roam free, it will be stopped, Kramer. Until then, off with their heads. And Elaine exits. George asks, well, isn't it a question of hygiene? Kramer says it's a myth, and besides, it makes sex more pleasurable. Well, that doesn't really help George, so he could care less. Jerry asks George, have you ever seen one? Yeah, my roommate in college. He got used to it. My take on this scene, well, this scene has a couple fun moments for Elaine. I like that she's stressing about finding the moil, and that little chat with Jerry about seeing an uncircumcised penis. That's the best exchange for her in the entire episode. I love the little physicality with the no face, no personality. It's really cute. Just classic JLD, adding a little extra to the line of dialogue with that physicality really makes it sing. We do find out more about Elaine in this scene, thanks to Jerry's amusement and kind of listing off the things she's done. So attending the finest finishing schools on the Eastern Seaboard. Apparently she was an equestrian, did equestrian competitions. She came out in debutante balls. So I guess from all of this, we can just surmise that Elaine comes from money. I mean, that's very high society things to do. And I guess I'm assuming Jerry's being serious. He's not doing a bit, but I guess it's possible he's doing a bit. But she doesn't refute it, so I'm thinking it's some true character information we find out here about Elaine. And if it's true, I won't do the song. I won't sing the terrible jingle I've made up, but I can make a very loose Gilmore Girls Seinfeld connection here by saying that young Elaine is very much like the Rory Gilmore character, because Rory went to the finest finishing schools on the Eastern Seaboard. Just one, Chilton. She was not an equestrian, but she did come out in a debutante ball. So, gosh, you guys, there's some similarities here. Rory Gilmore, Elaine Bennis. All right, moving on. I've never liked Elaine's dialogue at the end of the scene when she's about to exit. I like that she's had enough. She wants to leave because of this pigmen and women who love them discussion. That tracks for me. Of course, she would be like, this is ridiculous. I can't even be around this. It's weak writing to me, the whole, could you tape the conversation and I'll listen to it the next time. It's just, I don't know. It's just not very strong. And even the off with their heads, it just feels hacky to me. Speaking of hacky, the very expositional dialogue at the top of the scene, it's so bad. Like when Elaine is asking, what the hell is a moil? And Jerry just outright explains it. And then he has to hold the baby while they do it. It's just phoned in. I just feel like that stuff could have come out more organically. Yeah, I'm just kind of surprised. Larry Charles is such a strong writer. He's written some of my favorite Seinfeld episodes, but it just feels like, especially at the top of this scene, how expositional it is about the Moyle. Maybe he was tired that day. I don't know. Next, we're in the hospital. Jerry and Kramer are walking the halls. Kramer wants to show Jerry the pigman. George comes up and says he has to go see the hospital administrator. He'll meet him later in the parking lot. Kramer's like, well, wait a second. You have room in the car for the pigman. George, the pigman would give you a ride? Oh, stupid conversation. So then George exits. We see him go to the hospital administrator's office. The actress who plays the hospital administrator, Mrs. Sweedler, is Deborah Mooney. She's been in everything. I love her. I've seen her in multiple shows, and I've always been so enamored with her performances. First of all, her voice. How fantastic is her voice? So low and sexy. I love it. And her performance in this scene, I mean, she goes toe-to-toe with Jason Alexander just perfectly. That shift from being so professional to compassionate to George to absolutely irate with his attitude. Oh, she's a fantastic actress, and I love this performance. So in this scene, George, he's trying to use his usual lying charm to get her and the hospital to pay for all of the damage to his car, but it doesn't work, and she very loudly throws him out of her office. We go back to Jerry and Kramer finally finds the room. It's 1937, but it's empty. Then Kramer looks around and sees a doctor and asks about where the pigman is. This doctor's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then just to get him off his back, he's like, I think he's been released. Kramer isn't convinced. Jerry doesn't give a shit anymore. And that's the end of the scene. All right, next we are at the Bris. Jerry and Elaine are chatting. Jerry is very nervous because of his role in the Bris, holding the baby while he gets circumcised. Where's the Moyle? He's late. Elaine's like, relax. You'd think you were the one getting whacked. Jerry says he's not sure why he was asked to be the godfather, and he's only played softball with him. And Elaine says, well, what about me? I only got to know Myra because we sat together in the stands for a couple of games. And Jerry declares that Stan and Myra are level jumping the friendship. Elaine's like, yes, they are level jumping. George approaches a woman clearly interested in her, and she says she's never been to a Bris. And he says, if you need any help getting through it, if you get woozy, which is totally normal, just stay close to him, he'll get her through it. She says, I'm a cardiologist. I think I'll manage. The actress who plays the cardiologist is Tia Riebling. Not a ton of credits for her. She definitely made the rounds on some popular 90s shows. This is a really short scene, but I like her. The delivery of her dialogue is really well done. And even the way she looks at George when he approaches her is great. She's immediately amused at his awkwardness. She's just kind of like, what? What's this guy doing? I like Tia. Then we see Kramer sitting with Myra on the couch, just berating her about the Bris. She gets very upset and runs away, and Stan follows her. Kramer's like, oh, she'll be okay. Elaine's like, Kramer, what the hell are you doing? What's the matter with you? The doorbell rings. Oh, that's the Moyle. That's the Moyle. He's here. The Moyle comes in, and what can I say? He is a bit nutty. Basically goes on this entire rant. It starts from almost having a heart attack from hearing a loud noise. He hates the baby's crying, afraid of the neighborhood. He may get robbed on the way back to his car, and no one would help him. What's the point? He lectures Elaine about putting her wine glass on the edge of the table, which could, end up killing her in 2 years because she can never get all the glass out. He goes up to George and asks, are you holding the baby? No. Who's holding the baby? Now I need the baby. Bring me the baby. Kramer grabs the baby right before it's about to get circumcised to rescue him, but then falls off the couch. Stan gets the baby before Kramer falls. The Moyle is so angry. What is this? This is a holy ritual. At the very end of the scene, we finally see the Moyle going in for the circumcision and Jerry very flinchy. My take on this scene, it's my favorite scene of the episode, and unfortunately that has very little to do with Elaine's portion. I think the actor who plays the Moyle, his name's Charles Levin, is incredible. Just incredible in this scene. So funny. That rant he goes on, from the loud sound that startles him to when he's going in for the snip, it's just a masterclass at comedic monologue. So, so funny. There's actually a tragic story about this actor, Charles Levin. I just read about it when I was doing research for the episode. He retired from acting in 1998 and moved to Oregon, where he sort of just kind of became a shut-in from what I read. And then apparently he went missing in 2019. His kids reported him missing. And then he was found dead in his car a few days later. So just really, really tragic ending to this really talented actor's life. I mean, just this scene could be, kind of a testament to how amazing an actor he was. Such a sad end to this man's life. I like the Jerry and Elaine conversation about Stan and Myra level jumping the friendship. It's so Seinfeldian. The language saying level jumping, that's such a Seinfeld thing. Plus the sentiment of it, the concept of level jumping. You can't get more Seinfeld than that. So I really liked that conversation. And then when I was reflecting on especially my time in elementary school and junior high for sure, I was the one level jumping. We called it clingy, I think, back then, but it was level jumping. And I was guilty of doing that. All right, next we're in George's car. All four of them are on the way to the hospital. Jerry has a bloody finger. The mohel circumcised his finger. Elaine was like, well, you flinched. George blacked out. It was very traumatic for him. We find out that the baby is fine. They just took him to the hospital as a precautionary measure. But look at Jerry. He's the one that's hurt. Elaine tells him to stop it. He'll just need a few stitches. Nope, Jerry can't take that. He'll be deformed. Then we hear George get so excited, he spots another great parking space right in front of the hospital in an emergency, no less. Come on, give it to me. I really don't have a take on this scene. There's not much to Elaine's part here. I like that she's trying to put whiny Jerry in his place, but it's just a very transactional scene. We find out what's happening and why it's happening. All right, then we're in the hospital. All four of them are walking down the hall, talking about how awful the mohel was. And Elaine's like, I said I was sorry. Kramer breaks off from the group to, of course, find the pigman. And George exits to find the bathroom. Jerry and Elaine then run into Shaky the mohel. Jerry and the mohel start fighting, accusing each other of botching the bris. They get physical and have to be separated by Elaine and Stan. We see Myra come out with the baby. The baby's fine. The circumcision went well. And then after a very dramatic little end monologue, the mohel exits. Then we hear Kramer yell, out of my way, and run past with someone on his back. A pigman on his back, in fact. Then finally we are at the last scene of the episode. Jerry's trying to open a bottle of water, but with his circumcised finger he can't do it. Then he does another really bad Godfather impression. Elaine says, you do the worst Godfather I've ever heard. You're not even close. George is on the phone describing a man who stole his car to the police. He's giving all this physical description, and finally Elaine just goes up to him, lifts up her nose, and George has no choice but to say, looks like a pig. Kramer enters, and yeah, he admits it. It wasn't a pig man, just a fat little mental patient. Stan and Myra arrive, and, well, they fire Jerry and Elaine as godparents. They want Kramer. Then we have this little Godfather ending. Godfather. It's cheesy. My quick take, good resolution scene. I like Elaine making the pig nose for George while he's on the phone. I mean, that's what I'm just grasping at straws here for this scene. The twist of Kramer becoming the Godfather, it's funny. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will see you on the other side. Hey, take a look at your thumb. Is it green? If so, I'm talking to you. Your garden is the best one in the neighborhood, isn't it? Well, what if I told you it could be even better? That's right. You know it all starts with good soil. And I'm here to tell you, I got the best soil around. Mohel soil. Hi, I'm Ari Levy, retired mohel and founder of Mohel Soil. After 45 years in the Bris circuit, I decided to take all my knowledge as a moil and pour it into my passion for soil. Moil soil will help your garden grow beyond your wildest dreams. Your vegetables will taste better, your grass will grow fuller, and your flowers? Psh, forget about it. The secret to moil soil is a special blend of nutrients. You got your compost and your mix of manures. But there's a very special, all-natural ingredient that only a moil could ever have access to. And, as it turns out, baby sausage collars are like steroids for your garden. Thanks to all my moil connections in the community, I'll never run out of discarded 8-day-old penis flesh. I dedicated my life to celebrating the covenant between God and Abraham. And now, I clip and snip for a different reason. Because my plants and flowers are so huge thanks to moil soil! Find moil soil at any Joe's fruit stand and get 15% off your fruit purchase. Fruit grown in moil soil. Thanks for your business, Joe. Your peaches are looking great. Moil soil. For a garden that's supersized. And we're back. I'm going to move right on into Contributor Corner because there were no extras for this episode. Greg, of course, sent in some thoughts this week, so this is what Greg had to say. I like this episode a lot because once again we get all four intertwined in the same storyline. Well, right off the bat, Greg, we disagree. I don't like this episode a lot, but let's move on to your next thought and see why you like it so much. There's an interesting dynamic with Elaine that I just kind of noticed for the first time in this episode. While she is a woman, she is more like the guys when it comes to seeing babies or hearing about the birth. She isn't warm to it. I think there is always this assumption that all women long to be mothers, so hearing about the miracle of birth is such a joy to their hearts. But Elaine and Jerry have the same sentiment when hearing the details of the birth. I think that is somewhat revolutionary, at least on TV, where more often than not, every adult female character was a mother. Okay, this is interesting. Yes, I do love that Elaine isn't like doting over the baby. But like I said when I was covering that first scene, she's not uncomfortable. I mean, after he says, and then the placenta comes flying out, I think no matter who you are, you're going to be like, okay. I certainly agree with you, Greg, that she's not like doting and like, aw, about it. But she's certainly not as uncomfortable as Jerry is. Jerry's visibly uncomfortable with the birth story and then the breastfeeding that's happening in front of them. You see kind of Elaine, she's interested. She's not getting all like sappy about it, but she like her chin's forward. She's kind of looking and she's smiling when he's like, look at that kid, sucking away. She's sort of amused by it. So I see what you're saying, and I agree that Elaine isn't being portrayed as the usual like, oh, like weepy. I feel like in a usual sitcom you'd see a female character be really weepy and, oh, my uterus hurts, I want a baby now. You know, like you usually get that reaction. So I do like that Elaine's not like that. But I certainly don't think Elaine is not warm at all. At least in this episode, I think, as Elaine gets a little bit more jaded as time goes on, we do see her be very, kind of indifferent to children. But yeah, that's interesting. I interpreted it a little bit differently. All right, next, Greg says, Elaine's reaction to Jerry asking if she'd ever seen an uncircumcised penis was hilarious. This must have been so tricky to write for the censors because they never mentioned the penis or anything specific. It's all implied. I love what Elaine says. It had no face, no personality. This is so edgy for the time. Totally. This is the highlight of the episode for me. So funny. That's one of the very few moments that I enjoyed in this episode because it felt very Seinfeld. Greg's next thought, my favorite scene in the whole episode is when they are discussing pigmen. They all get so many great lines here. It's just the show at its best. I love when George says, you get a few of these pigmen walking around, suddenly I don't look so bad. Wow, we are just not on the same page, Greg. I don't know. I think it's because I just don't like the pigman story at all. That even this conversation, because you're not wrong, it is a fun exchange between the four of them about what if there were pigmen walking around. It just, I just didn't like it. Like I said, I don't love Elaine's dialogue in that scene at all. Like, could you tape the pigmen and the women who love them discussion? I just feel like because George and Jerry get really funny lines, we could have done something a little bit better for Elaine. The taping thing is really dumb. It just felt weak. I'll just go back to what I said earlier. It just felt weak. Greg's next thought: the scene at the Bris is hilarious across the board, but I must give a shout out to Charles Levin, who played the Moyle. His performance in this episode practically steals the show. I'm not sure that a one-episode guest star has ever made me laugh more. Agreed. Okay, we're on the same page there, Greg. Incredible performance again by Charles Levin. Just absolutely incredible. And yeah, to your point, I don't know if one guest star has made that kind of an impact. I can't think of anyone offhand right now, but he's definitely in the top for sure. So funny, so masterful. I wish there was a little bit more about him, on the extras or something. There really wasn't. They just kind of mentioned him in the notes about nothing and gave some of his other credits. But yeah, unfortunately, I just expected more. Like, how do they find him? Like, I just felt like there had to be like someone knew him from Broadway or something. He just had that much gravitas to that performance that I wouldn't be surprised if he was like a very accomplished theater actor. But like I said, tragic end to his life and really not too many details about what else he had done in his career. But you know what? Wherever you are, Charles Levin, we give you props because you really do steal this episode with that performance. It's so well done. Thank you so much, Greg, for sending in thoughts this week. If you would like to become a contributor to Hot and Heavy, please email me at elainepodcast@gmail.com. That's elainepodcast@gmail.com. My favorite Elaine moments, this is such a meh episode for Elaine, but I do like the no face, no personality. I think I've mentioned it like 5 times now, but I really like that moment. And that like lead up, that I love her head shaking expression before she says that dialogue, just like that. She's so grossed out to even think about an uncircumcised penis. So when you think about it, we get a lot of information about Elaine in this episode. What Jerry tells us, her East Coast fancy life, and that she doesn't like penises with foreskin. So if anything, mediocre episode, but we learned some new stuff about Elaine. And my final notes, I think I've hinted enough at it, and I think I've just outright said it. This isn't my favorite episode. Even though I really do enjoy the Moyles' performance, this is an episode, it's almost, the humor is a little bit too broad for me. The whole pigman story, it just loses its appeal almost instantly for me. I do not enjoy it at all. So because of that, I have a very significant scene swap idea to get more Elaine in the episode. Just eliminate the pigman plot altogether and explore that whole level jumping concept. I loved that. As I said, that was the most Seinfeldian issue discussed in the episode. The whole level jumping thing is so brilliant. I love that term. I love the sentiment of it. I think it's something, again, that Seinfeld does so well, things people have experienced. So I think they could have explored that a lot more. Kramer still could have had his anti-Bris stance. George still could have had the whole hospital reimbursement thing for his car. But the pigman, it's just too broad, not funny enough for Seinfeld for me. I appreciate the attempt to think outside the box, Larry Charles, but it just fell flat. And also, with this episode, we're back to what I'm calling a knee episode, not enough Elaine, but looking forward to this being the last knee episode for a while. We're getting some really, really juicy Elaine episodes coming up. I didn't mean for that to sound as gross as it did. So I think that's all I can say about the Bris. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.